Good morning, bonjour, buongiorno. Welcome to my nuclear teaching of Thursday, December 29, 2022. The last one of the year, but certainly not the last one. Because also next year I'm going to debunk anti-nuclear memes around waste, safety and cost. Because nuclear is the best we have. We know this in 60 years, atoms for peace. It's not an opinion, it is science. So, today, what will I be teaching? I will be teaching about the European Green Deal. It's actually a danger to nuclear, not in the physical sense, but in the political psychological sense. Because this person here, who actually symbolizes the European Green Deal and therefore also 2 decades of failed, dysfunctional European energy policy, Frans Timmermans, the European Commissioner for Climate, speaks 7 languages, doesn't know anything about science and technology, has never worked in it, doesn't know anything about energy and doesn't know anything about nuclear, although he is against it. So why is he openly the first commissioner that actually openly is against nuclear? Because he represents an ideology. He believes in the ideology of extensification. Yes, we, citizens of the EU, we have to extensify our energy use. Actually, we have to extensify everything from biological farming to solar panels. We have to extensify, meaning more input, more footprint, less output, and hence energy poverty and energy shortage. So, 2 decades of mandatory green targets have actually brought us right into this energy crisis of 2022 because we have a shortage of fossil and we have a shortage of nuclear. So why do we have that? Because we as member states are obliged to increase the portion of biomass, solar and wind and geothermal every year. And that actually means that all money in a mandatory way flows to green and doesn't flow to nuclear and doesn't flow to fossil either. And that has important consequences. Because in the 60s and the 70s, we here in the EU built 150 nuclear power plants within 20 years. Because we believed in it. And this brought us to approximately 30% nuclear electricity around 2000, which is approximately 14% primary energy. The biggest clean energy source within the EU. But what has happened as a consequence of these mandatory green targets? I'll show you. That's the following. That we are not building nuclear power plants everywhere. We're building nuclear power plants just here and there, basically against all odds. One of my favorite heroes is Anne Lauvergeon, ex-Areva. Areva is a French nuclear power company, now sort of integrated in EDF in France. And she actually had the courage to, against all odds, build 3 nuclear power plants here in the EU. In Olkiluoto, Finland, in Flamanville, France, and in Hinkley Point, England. Now, because these are sort of all once-off, first-of-a-kind nuclear power plants, without a long-term vision about nuclear fleets and nuclear programs and all that, all these constructions took a long time, were overrun on cost. When it actually started, well, almost 15 years ago, There wasn't even a design approval for the very modern nuclear power plant designed by Areva, the so-called EPR, the European Pressurized Reactor. Consequently, we have 3 first-of-a-kind projects that all overrun on cost, took long building times and all that. Now, the anti-nuclear lobby actually uses always these 3 examples to sort of claim that nuclear is expensive and not needed and we have green targets and all that. Totally untrue. As I explained in my last teaching, the whole world builds nuclear power plants, specifically the new world, China, India, Middle East. But the EU goes for green and basically sort of ignores, actually sabotages nuclear through these mandatory green targets. So, what actually now has to change? I'll explain it. What has to change is that we shouldn't have a green deals with mandatory green targets. No, we should have clean deals with mandatory clean targets. That actually means that nuclear energy should be part of Europeans' energy policy. That is to say, countries that will want to go full on with nuclear power plants rather than with biomass, solar and wind, which are dysfunctional, intermittent, not clean at all. I will talk about that next year extensively. So we need a clean deal. We don't need a green deal. Countries that want to go full on with nuclear should have the opportunity to do so without being obliged to install these crazy biomass, solar, wind parks, factories, whatever, you name it. It's all small, it's all low energy density, it's dysfunctional, there is no space, there is no money, and all that. Don't do it. Go for a clean deal. So countries that want to go for nuclear 100% should have the opportunity to do that. And that's not the reality today. On the contrary, the cleanest country that we have in the EU, the cleanest member state, France, with 56 nuclear power plants, the cleanest country has actually to pay a fine to Frans Timmermans, a fine of €1 billion, because they haven't reached their green targets. How about that? Crazy, isn't it? Don't blame nuclear, blame Frans Timmermans. So, this was my teaching of today, on Thursday, December 29, 2022. We need a clean deal, not a green deal. I wish you all a happy new year. And don't forget, save the planet. Great idea. Build nuclear power plants. The more, the faster, the better. It's not an opinion, it's science. Have a great day. Ciao, alla prossima.